You could have money in your account right now and still feel broke, not financially, mentally. There is a version of you that checks the bank account 3 times a day, even when nothing has changed. That feels a quiet panic before buying something small. That apologizes internally for spending money on yourself. That cannot fully relax, even when the rent is paid and the fridge is full. If that sounds familiar, this is not about your income. This is about something much deeper. Here is the question that most financial advice completely ignores. Why does the fear stay even after the situation improves? Why does anxiety about money follow people who are no longer in financial danger? Why does the feeling of being broke persist long after the actual broke period is over? The answer is not about your bank balance, it is about your brain. And once you understand it, a lot of things will start to make sense. Let us start with something you have probably experienced but never quite named. You are sitting somewhere quiet. Maybe it is a Sunday afternoon. The bills are paid. There's nothing urgent happening. And yet, somewhere underneath the surface, there is this low hum of unease, this background noise that tells you something is wrong or something is about to go wrong, even when you look around and there is nothing to point to. So you pick up your phone, you open your banking app, you check the balance. Nothing has changed since the last time you checked 2 hours ago. But somehow, checking it makes you feel slightly better. For a few minutes. Then, the unease comes back. Or maybe your version looks different. Maybe it shows up as guilt. You buy yourself something small and completely reasonable, and almost immediately you feel bad about it. Like you did something wrong. Like you broke a rule that nobody ever officially told you about. Or maybe it shows up as avoidance. You do not open your statements. You do not look at the numbers because looking at them makes the anxiety spike. So instead, you just try not to think about it and hope things are roughly okay. These are not personality flaws. They are not signs that you are bad with money. They are signs that your brain learned something a long time ago, and it has not been told that the lesson no longer applies. Here is the belief that most people carry without realizing it. Once I have enough money, I will finally feel safe. It sounds completely logical. And in some ways, it is. More financial stability does reduce certain real pressures. Paying off debt matters, having savings matters, building income matters, but there is a version of this belief that goes much deeper. It is the belief that a number in an account will eventually switch off the anxiety. That once you cross some invisible threshold, the fear will stop, and a calm, secure feeling will take its place. And many people spend years chasing that threshold, only to find that when they reach it, the fear does not go away. It just finds a new reason to stay. So what is actually happening? The human brain is extraordinarily good at one thing above everything else: survival. Not happiness, not contentment, survival. And survival requires threat detection. It requires the brain to constantly scan the environment and ask, is something wrong? Is danger nearby? What could go wrong next? In ancient times, this was the difference between life and death. The brain that stayed alert, that never fully relaxed, that always anticipated the next threat, survived. The brain that let its guard completely down did not. We still carry those brains. Now take that survival system and run it through years of financial stress, not imagined stress, real stress. The kind where you watch someone you trusted check the bank account with a look on their face that told you the news was not good. The kind where there were conversations you were not supposed to hear. The kind where certain things could not be bought, certain things had to be worried about, and money felt like this constant source of tension in the background of everything. Or maybe it was your own experience. You went through a period where things were genuinely tight, where you had to make hard choices about what you could and could not afford, where uncertainty was real, and the consequences of that uncertainty were real. What happens during those periods is that the brain adapts, it learns, it builds new habits at a level much deeper than conscious thought. The nervous system starts treating financial unpredictability as a baseline. It recalibrates its idea of normal. And that recalibration does not automatically undo itself when the situation improves. This is what researchers call scarcity mindset. But it is more than just a way of thinking. It becomes a way of being. a physical state that the body carries even when the external facts have changed. The nervous system learned instability, and stability, when it finally arrives, feels unfamiliar, even suspicious. Think about that for a moment. The very thing you work toward, financial stability, can feel uncomfortable when you actually get it, because your nervous system is not wired for it yet. It is wired for the previous reality, the one where something could go wrong at any moment. So it keeps scanning, keeps watching, keeps waiting for the moment when the rug gets pulled. This is called hypervigilance. It is a state of heightened alertness that originally served a protective function. It kept you prepared. It kept you from being caught off guard. And in a genuinely unstable situation, that alertness had real value. But when the situation stabilizes and the alertness does not, it becomes a kind of suffering. The guard dog that protected you during a real threat is now barking at nothing. And no matter how many times you tell it everything is okay, it does not quite believe you. Because this is the core of what is happening. Sometimes your financial situation improves, but your nervous system never gets the message. The situation changed. The internal experience did not. And this explains so much. It explains why people who grew up with financial stress can earn solid incomes as adults and still feel like they are one bad day away from losing everything. It explains why checking the account over and over does not actually relieve the anxiety, it just briefly interrupts it. It explains why the guilt after spending feels so disproportionate to what was actually spent. It explains why relaxing feels almost dangerous, because relaxing means dropping your guard. And dropping your guard is what you learned you could never afford to do. Consider two people. Give them the exact same income, the exact same apartment, the exact same financial circumstances. One of them grew up in a home where money was consistent, stable, rarely the source of tension. The other grew up watching money be a source of constant stress and uncertainty. They are both adults now, both earning the same amount, both objectively in similar financial positions. But their internal experience is completely different. The first person spends money without prolonged guilt. They save without obsessing. They can sit on a Saturday with nothing financially urgent happening and actually feel that ease, not because they have more, but because their nervous system learned at a foundational level that stability was the baseline. The second person checks their account more, feels the low hum of unease on that same Saturday, feels guilt when they spend on themselves, worries about the future even when the present is fine. Not because they are doing something wrong, but because their nervous system learned a different baseline, one where something could always go wrong. Same money, completely different internal world. And this is what most conversations about personal finance miss entirely. They focus on the external, the numbers, the strategies, the habits, all of which matter, genuinely, but none of which address the internal experience that shapes how all of those numbers feel. Because here is the truth, money solves external problems, it pays the bills, it covers the emergencies, it creates real options that did not exist before. But money does not automatically reprogram a nervous system that learned to live in scarcity. The external situation can change in months. The internal wiring can take years if no one ever addresses it. And most people never address it. They keep thinking the number has to go higher. One more raise, one more milestone, one more security net, and then they will finally feel okay. But the feeling never quite arrives because they are looking for it in the wrong place. So what does actually help? The first thing, and it is not a small thing, is awareness. Simply knowing this is happening changes your relationship to the fear. When the anxiety spikes and you feel the urge to check the account for the fourth time today, you can start to recognize that as a learned pattern rather than an accurate signal. You can observe it without fully obeying it. That is not the same as making it disappear, but it begins to loosen its grip. The second is something you could call intentional financial calm. This means making small, deliberate choices that give your nervous system evidence of safety. Not big, dramatic gestures, small, consistent ones, letting money sit in an account without moving it, spending something on yourself without spiraling. Noticing when the anxiety tells you something catastrophic is coming and sitting with that feeling long enough to observe that the catastrophe does not actually arrive. This is how the nervous system learns to update, not through one big revelation, but through thousands of small moments where the expected danger does not materialize. The third is about separating past from present. Your nervous system learned its lessons in a specific time, a specific context. Those lessons made complete sense then. But the context has changed, and part of healing this is learning to ask, am I reacting to what is actually happening right now, or am I reacting to a version of the past that no longer exists? It sounds simple. It is not always easy. But the question itself is powerful. You escaped the situation. You did the work, made the changes, survived the hard period, built something more stable. But part of your brain still thinks the danger is happening. Part of you is still braced for impact from a collision that already ended years ago. And that is not a flaw. That is not weakness. That is what happens when a mind that was built to protect you, protected you. It learned everything it could about the danger so that you would never be caught off guard again. But you are allowed to let it rest now. Not by pretending everything is perfect, not by ignoring real financial challenges, but by slowly, gently, consistently showing your nervous system that it is allowed to believe the evidence in front of it. That the present is not the past. That stability, when it exists, is real. So let me leave you with one question. Not about your bank balance, not about your income, not about any number at all. What would your life feel like if your mind finally believed you were safe? Sit with that. Because that feeling is not just possible, it is something you can actually build toward.